Be cool, be kind, be classy. The cupcakes are sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions and lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Mistrial. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Procedural, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes are sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello. Hello, my friends. It's really good to see you once again. How's everyone? Happy Monday. Happy Monday, everyone. Today is Monday, February 17th, 2025, and it's a holiday here in the U.S. It's President's Day. Well, it used to be a holiday. It's kind of a holiday. The kids in high school and elementary school here have no school, but college kids do have school. And the garbage guys came today, so I'm confused. Is it still a holiday? Is it not a holiday? I don't know, but it's Monday, and we're here. And I don't have a ton of time today, so this is your show today, you guys. This is your show. You're going to tell me what you want to talk about, because I have until about like 3:20 before I got to go drive the mommy Uber. It is now 1:30, 1:34. I'm a little bit late. Sorry. I always think I'm going to be ready, and I'm never ready. I'm just throwing things together, plugging things in at the last minute. So here's what we have today. Today, they have finally released the full cut of the Ted Daniel interview on Boston 25. They've been teasing it for days. They've been saying, come sub to our YouTube channel to see the full extended version of Karen Reed's interview with Ted Daniel. It's about an hour and 11 minutes long. Just dropped this morning. We have Aidan Kearney did an amazing interview with one of the jurors in the Karen Reed case that he aired on, I think it was Saturday night. And that was really interesting. I also thought that the full interview with Alan and Karen was amazing. And so many people are like, she shouldn't talk. And I've been saying for a long time, yeah, there are certain clients that shouldn't talk. Maybe she shouldn't talk, but this was, I thought, a great interview for her. And look, it's the only way for her to get her story out to the public without taking the stand. So I thought it was a really good interview. I also thought that the juror interview was an amazing interview. First of all, I was shocked that the juror came on camera and told his real name. I think his name is Ronnie. Aidan had some amazing questions for him. He was, how do we say this? Aidan was even-tempered. He didn't blast the juror when the juror said things that Aidan, probably clearly didn't like to hear. I thought he was very respectful of the juror. I thought the chat kind of went off a little bit. And look, it took a lot of guts for this guy to come on camera and talk about what went on in the jury room and what they talked about and what they were hung up on and the things they believed and the things they didn't believe. And listen, there is nothing more valuable for an attorney than to be able to speak to a jury afterwards. And in New York, this is something that we commonly do. When the verdict comes in and the jury's done, we go outside and stick around in the hallway and talk to them and ask them what worked, what didn't work. I think they're not allowed to do that in Massachusetts. That's the impression that I got. But there is no better feedback for an attorney than to talk to the jury after the trial is over. What landed, what didn't land, who did you believe, who didn't you believe? So the work that Aiden did with this juror interview, and I think it was like 2 hours long, maybe even longer, is invaluable information for the defense and for both sides, really. I mean, Ronnie said a lot of things that were shocking to so many of us who know so much about this case. And that's what you got to keep in mind. Look, I've been covering this case since January of 2024. I've read every document I could get my hands on. We've looked at every motion. We've been at every hearing. We've seen the judge. These people were walking into this case cold. And there were 12 people talking about this case that didn't know anything about it. And so, while I found it surprising that there were some witnesses that they did not find credible, like Lucky Loughran, and listen, this juror is only speaking for himself. Understand that too. He's not speaking for the other 11 people that deliberated with him. I mean, he may give us a little bit of insight about what they spoke about and what he thought the other people were thinking, but he really cannot speak to what the other people were actually thinking. So keep that in mind too. This is one person who eventually landed on not guilty. He did not think that Karen hit John with her car. And there were so many things that were really so invaluable to hear that will give both sides a roadmap going into this for take two, for the sequel here. That is what things need to be hammered home. Reasonable doubt needs to be hammered home. And we've been saying that since the beginning. They need more than an hour for closings. Ronnie said that they were intimidated, or at least he was intimidated by Brian Albert and Colin Albert sitting there in closings. He said that Karen's facial expressions did influence certain members of the jury, and not only Karen, but family members. And he didn't exactly say her family members or John's family members. So it could have gone both ways, right? So when people are freaking out about what Ronnie said, you have to remember this is just one guy. One guy. He was an EMT. There were certain witnesses they found credible and certain witnesses they didn't find credible. There were certain things they found to be, in his word, distractors, which I found really interesting. He also said that the ARCA guys should have testified first in the defense case, that having them on at the end of the case made it seem like it was less important. And that's really great feedback, right? And in the end, there was still a mistrial. It was still a hung jury. But he did confirm that the jury agreed to acquit on counts 1 and 3, which we are never going to hear about. It doesn't matter at this point because the appellate court has said it doesn't matter. There's no reason to call them back. This was not an acquittal under the law of the state of Massachusetts. Whether this is going to be brought up to a higher appellate court or to the federal level remains to be seen. It's my opinion that would not be money well spent. I think the money is better spent on this retrial and getting it over with. And an appeal is only going to delay things even further. That's my own personal opinion. I'm also not going to sit here and, Monday morning quarterback the defense attorneys and the way that they tried that first case and say they should have done this, they should have done that, they should have done. Absolutely not. It's not my place. I would never do that. I would never second guess amazing trial lawyers who I thought did an amazing job the first time. And who am I? Who am I to do that? I can throw in my 2 cents and say what I think should maybe happen next time. And I've been screaming this since the beginning, that my opinion on this case was very, very simple. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. And maybe instead of saying Karen Reed was framed, that's how you start your closing. Your opening. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. You're going to hear a lot of testimony from a lot of people. You're going to hear a lot of spaghetti thrown at the wall. But the one thing that you need to keep in mind is that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. The evidence will show that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. And that's really what an opening is. It's what the evidence will show. And you have to just keep coming back to that. There's no evidence to show that he was hit by a car. And then you have to build from there, in my opinion, because the jury obviously didn't get that. They didn't get it. And I think, and I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and after listening to Ronnie's interview, I think I'll link Turtle Boy's video below for those of you who haven't seen it. I kept thinking, how could they acquit on count 3, which is leaving the scene of an accident of personal injury or death, and not be able to decide whether she was guilty on count 2, which was the manslaughter charge of still hitting him with her car. And I finally, worked it out in my head that they must have just believed that she hit him, but she didn't know she hit him. So she couldn't be liable for leaving the scene if she didn't know that she hit him. And that is the only way that I can reconcile that in my brain. Because I've been thinking about that for a long time. For a long, long, long time. Yeah, Sydney says Bev set that up by not allowing ARCA to say that they were connected to the FBI investigation. And that is what Ronnie said too. He said they weren't sure if the ARCA guys came from Karen's insurance company, if they were hired by him, if they were hired by Turtle Boy. But here's the thing, and we read this in one of the motions that we read last week. I think it was the opposition, or I think it was the motion by the Commonwealth to keep the ARCA guys out this time. The feds have said, look, our contract with them has ended. It's ended. So we're not contracted with them anymore. Any information you want, you can go, Karen's team can hire them now. And now they can be hired by the defense. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that because Trooper Paul. Ronnie said they were laughing at Trooper Paul's testimony, and some of them couldn't even keep their laughter in. They couldn't. You feel like you want to donate to the defense because they're going to need a lot of money for the experts during this retrial, and they can hire the ARCA experts themselves this time. So there's that. How did they know about Turtle Boy? I don't know. I've been through what the entire. Oh, thank you, Bob or Allie or whoever's tuning in here. I think it's Bob. That's the move. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. The injuries don't support it. You're going to hear a lot of stuff. You're going to hear a lot of noise. Don't focus on the noise. Focus on what does the evidence show? There are no injuries to John O'Keefe's body that line up with a car accident. Something happened. Something happens to John O'Keefe. We don't know what it is. We don't know who did it, if anyone did it. But what we do know is that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. And everything else is just noise. I think that the jury had a really hard time wrapping their head around possible law enforcement corruption, which is wild to me because I come from a place, New York, Long Island, where corruption is and has been rampant for years and years and decades and decades and decades. I mean, the Long Island serial killer, in my opinion, was not caught in 2010 when the bodies started being discovered on Giggle Beach because of all the corruption that was going on in Suffolk County, New York, because the chief of police was totally corrupt. James Burke eventually went to federal prison, as did the district attorney, Tom Spoda. So we know a lot about corruption here in New York from what happened in Suffolk County. And it's not so foreign to us. It's not a foreign concept. I think that the average person, the average layperson wants to believe the police. They want to trust in the police. And so I think it's a hard pill for them to swallow. And I think that a lot of the testimony just kind of went over their heads. They had to take notes. They're not allowed readbacks in Massachusetts. And if they are, it's judicial discretion. And this judge did not allow it. I heard somebody, I can't even remember who yesterday, talking about transcripts. I don't think trial transcripts they're not available. The trial transcripts are not available when the jury is deliberating. It takes months for the trial transcripts to be transcribed and drafted and typed up. They're just not available. What is available is a readback, where in New York, and this is very common, it happens in every single trial, the jury will come in with a question and say, can we have a readback of Trooper Proctor's testimony when he testified about XYZ? And the judge usually says, okay. And they call the court reporter in, and the court reporter reads the testimony back to the jury. It is very commonly done in New York. Mark Betterow and our heads were popping off when we learned during the trial that they were not allowed to have readbacks. Because when you got 12 people who are sitting back there relying on their own notes, their notes are not going to be clear. I mean, isn't it important that we get to the truth instead of relying on people's memories of what the testimony was? Because I know from my own notes that sometimes my own notes are unclear. Sometimes I can't read them. Sometimes I write down the wrong thing. And so for them to have to rely on their notes when they don't do this for a living, they're not lawyers, is a very, very difficult thing. Oh, Allie's flying back from Florida. She went to Florida for the break. Well, our break is just starting here, so maybe you guys had the week off before. And so I think that relying on notes is a problem. It's a problem. He also said he didn't know how long the trial was going to be. I saw that comment flash by. And so perhaps they should have given them a better indication. I think they kind of did tell them how long the trial would be, right? But no, they didn't ask for a readback. Hold on. Wait a second. KPT, they never asked for a readback. She shut them down with, you have all the evidence you're going to receive. No, they asked for the cert report and they were told you have everything that you can have. I think it was made clear that they're not allowed to have readbacks, if I am not conflating this with another case. They asked for the cert report and they discussed it in open court. And then the judge said, what do you want me to tell them? And then she wound up just saying, you have everything you need with regard to evidence. But it's because that cert report did not exist. It didn't exist. And that's what they wanted to know. When were those pieces of taillight found? Who found them? Where's the log? We want to know what time they started finding those pieces. And there was no log. There was no log. So every state has different rules. Every juror is different. You guys need to understand that while many of you are shocked and horrified by the things that he said, this is not uncommon. It is not uncommon. We watched in, I think it was the Carly Gregg trial that was in Mississippi, when the attorneys were arguing for an instruction on reasonable doubt. I think it was Bridget Todd who came on the show with me, who is one of Carly's defense attorneys, and said, we wanted the judge to give an instruction on reasonable doubt. And we heard that in open court. And the judge said, no, everyone knows what reasonable doubt is. I'm not going to instruct them on that. And the truth of the matter is, no, they don't. No, they don't. So that is one of the things, just one of the things that the defense will have to get into in their opening. And they also need more than an hour for opening. I mean, for closing. In their closing, they need to get into it. Maybe in their opening too. Give a definition of reasonable doubt. Because if they're back there in the jury room thinking of other ways that this could have happened, that is by definition reasonable doubt. You know, they found a lot of the McCabe testimony, I think it was Jennifer McCabe and some other, to be credible. They did not believe Lucky Loughran because of the basketball hoop, because he didn't remember when he hit the basketball. Like the in my opinion, like the minutia that they did focus on was so wild. It was just wild. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, but I haven't had a chance to dissect the test, dissect his interview 100%. But if anybody wants to email me the exact timestamp where he did talk about reasonable doubt in Aiden's interview, that would be awesome. Let me just put my, and we can look at that. So do you guys want to watch the full interview? Here's my interview. Here's my email, fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. Do you guys want to watch the full Boston 25 interview? Because I don't know how many of you have watched it. I think, yeah, let's watch it. Let's watch it together. So what we're going to do is, I may speed it up just a little tiny bit. It's an hour and 11 minutes. Maybe I won't. We've seen a little snippets of it. We saw, it's 2 6-minute clips, I think, and we saw 1 2-minute clip. So we really have not seen the entire interview, and I think we need to watch it together. So let's do it. Oh, you guys waited for me. Oh, thank you so very much. Listen, Karen Reed is the kind of woman, she's a strong woman. I think Karen and I are a lot alike. We're strong women. We have trouble holding our tongue. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like strong women. That's why you see her attacked all the time on social media for being outspoken, for her facial expressions, for the way she dresses, for the things she says. She's snarky. And she wants to tell her story. She wants to, I think it was all they could do to hold her back from jumping on the stand during the first trial. But based on what we heard Ronnie say, and no spoilers, please. Based on what we heard Ronnie say about the facial expressions and the family members' facial expressions, I think it's going to have to be toned down for trial 2. I think Don't turn around and look at your parents. Don't do anything in front of the jury. And look, we know she has a very close relationship with her parents. And we know that they're very, very close. And, you know, there are people who calls their mother at 1:15 in the morning? I would if I needed my mother to advise me on whether or not I should leave somebody's 14, I think, was she 14 at the time, Denise, home alone or not. I have that kind of relationship with my mother. And you know what? I feel sorry for people who don't. And I feel sorry for people who don't understand how they can call their parents at any time. I would hope that my kids would call me at any time. So it's crazy, right? It's kind of crazy what social media chooses to hang their hat on, but I guess it's not surprising. All right, here we go. This is Ted Daniels' entire uncut. Well, I mean, it's cut because, you know, they've asked for the cutting room floor stuff and they'll get it. The defense won't oppose that. They're entitled to it. They know full well that when Karen gives an interview, anything that's not aired is fair game. It's fair game. They're going to get it. They're not going to oppose that motion. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you, the Goodmans. The Goodmans are here. People don't like it. A lot of people think women should just shut up, be barefoot and pregnant. And I guess, you know, listen, in a lot of ways, we're living in the 50s. For those of you who watched the police officer Sean Souza show with me on Saturday, it took me like a full 24 hours to decompress from that because it is so horrific what happened in Fall River. And for those of you, so many of you who live in Fall River don't even know about this case. Sean Souza is a former Dartmouth cop who was convicted by a jury after 2 trials. First one was a hung jury. Second one just happened in October. He was convicted on all counts for forcibly having sex with, let's say, his 6-year-old stepdaughter several times before she was 8 years old. He was convicted by a jury in Fall River. And not only was there one victim/survivor who was his 6 to 8-year-old stepdaughter, there was another victim/survivor who was 15 at the time. Both women testified. One was 19. One was, I think, a little bit older, in her 20s. BACA was there, the Bikers Against Child Abuse. Kevin Reddington represented ex-cop Sean Souza. He made a half-assed 1.5-page motion to set aside the verdict. It was a scratch and sniff motion, no detail, didn't argue any law, just was like, you know, against the weight of the evidence, please, you know, overturn the jury verdict. And Commonwealth opposed vigorously. And for her own reasons, Judge Susan E. Sullivan of Bristol County overturned that jury verdict and very quietly let Sean Souza out of prison, former cop, in late December. But nobody knew about it until February 5th when it hit the news, or February 6th. It's horrific. I read the decision by that judge. Go back and watch it, please. More people need to know about it because that judge, in my opinion, just threw us back to the 1950s with regard to no corroborating. It's horrific. I don't even want to talk about it anymore because it hurts my soul. But please go watch it because everyone needs to know. All right, here we go. This is Ted Daniels' full interview. And we know that this was done, I think, part of it was done January 29th. And then part of it was done, she said, I think the day before she was arrested. So maybe like February 1st. So January 20th, February 1st. Here we go.
Full disclosure, we invited you here. But of course, it is unusual for someone who's accused of murder to do this interview or others. Why do you want to speak to the people of Massachusetts and beyond?
I have nothing to hide. My life is in the balance, and it shouldn't be. And I believe sunlight is the best disinfectant. And that's been our team motto since inception. I think the more I've seen, the more information the public has, the more they understand what we already know.
And
that's right. She's got nothing to hide. She's got nothing to hide. And that's why she's out there telling her story. And that's why she's not afraid to tell her story. And that's why she's not afraid of the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor. Because the truth doesn't change. And sunlight is the best disinfectant. And you know what? It was about time that Karen Reed's team got an interview by a friendly, right? Remember the friendly? Remember they were waiting on a friendly? Mike Lank to come to 34 Fairview that day. A friendly that was so friendly that Jen McCabe felt comfortable enough calling him back at 9 a.m. and saying, oh, you know what? There's a couple of things that I want to add to my statement. Can you come back? Because, you know, I don't know if anybody heard this, but Karen Reed did say, you know, did I hit him? Could I have hit him in front of some officers? I don't know if anybody wrote it down. But please come back to my house so I can add that to my statement. Ted Daniels the friendly in this situation, in my opinion. I think he gets it.
When we talk about the public, there's so much going on in the atmosphere of this case. How much of that do you pay attention to?
I pay attention a little bit to everything. The parts of the public that seem a little dirtier than others, I have close friends and people I trust that filter through it, because there are threads of important information in every channel of the public, on social media, just out and about in Norfolk County or in Suffolk, through our emails. So what I can't manage or don't want to manage, we have a lot of it covered from people that we trust and people who support us.
Look, she's a tough chick. She's a tough chick, and she's got thick skin. But those of you who you know, choose to wade out into the cesspool of Twitter, you see it every day. You see the vile, nasty things that people say about her. And look, there's only so much your brain can handle in a day of people talking vile, nasty, trashy things about her. There's one person who came out who is an attorney that said, I hope that she goes to jail and is essayed in jail. She deserves it in prison. It's wild what's going on out there in the wild west of the Twitter, where nothing is off limits and people can say whatever they want and hide behind fake names and then protect who responds to their vile tweets. And she can only handle so much. So she has other people doing it for her, but they're watching social media. They're watching the chats, because you guys are the mirror jury. But you guys in my chat in particular happen to know a lot more about this case than the general public. But hopefully with interviews like this, people will become more interested in this case. So we'll see.
Said some pretty nasty things about you online. Do you read that? Do you process that?
I read some of it. I don't take it to heart, but it's bothersome. But I understand why it is. There are bad, evil, nefarious players in this. There are people who are adverse to other people in this whole case. People who support me, and I've known my whole life, as does everyone, that there's not a lot of good in some people, and it doesn't drag me down in any way. It makes me feel like we're covering ground here. The nastier it gets, the more I know that we're making an impact to people that have a lot to worry about.
3 years.
Right. And I've taken a lot of heat online too. And I was getting so upset about it in the beginning. And then people are saying to me, look, the reason they hate you is because you're making an impact. People are listening to what you have to say and you make too much sense. And that's why people want to shut you up. I get it. I think it's horrible that she has to go through this. And I think it's horrible that our children have grown up having to go through this, where people can bully you relentlessly online with no ramifications. And the what it's doing to our children is even more horrifying. But she's a grown woman. And it's horrifying her until, you build up a thick enough skin to where you're just like, I just don't care anymore. Like, I'm too old to care. Go ahead, keep at it. But if you have that much time on your hands all day to sit online behind a fake name and just throw trash out there about other people, that's kind of sad.
Have now passed since John's death. How much do you think about him with everything else that is going on?
I think about him in terms of his final days, his final weeks. I mean, we have his cell phone, which a cell phone to anyone is like a diary, and it tracks everything you've done. And I've gone over and over his final movements, his heart rate, his injuries, the time that he did everything that day and the days leading up to it. But I've said this to other people. The time that I spent with John, 2 years, it's now been 3 since he's gone, since he was killed. And I'm a year beyond. I've eclipsed the time that I spent with him. And I have very mixed feelings, when I look back on John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death and to this nightmare that I'm living. It's
Poor decisions by whom?
by both of us. Just drinking, being around the wrong people is chief among them. Wrong people for the weeks leading up. They wouldn't have been people I would have chosen on my own.
For the
To be
weeks leading
around.
up. Okay. So remember, that was cut out of the first interview that we listened to. The first interview said it ended at, the people that we were hanging around with. That's where it ended. But now she goes on to say for the weeks ahead, the weeks leading up to this. Remember, that's when the Aruba trip was. That was weeks ahead of this. Aruba was around the beginning of January, right? And so it was the Aruba people. It was all of these people that were, look, in my opinion, John was the one who got away. All of these women texting him all the time, all of these ex-girlfriends, like all of a sudden now they're coming out and doing interviews with pictures of them from 20 years ago. He was like the one that got away. These women were texting him constantly, hey, come on out. Even that evening, didn't Julie Albert, text him like, where are you? Are you coming down? It's weird. And to be the girlfriend of a man who it seems like every other woman wants has got to be really uncomfortable. She handled it really well and she's still handling it really well. But is that what she's saying? Like underneath it all, did she not really want to go to Aruba with these, wasn't it 60 people who went on this Aruba trip? And then you got the Sullivan sisters coming in and throwing her under the bus and saying, I thought she was an effing, I remember that Marietta Sullivan testimony was horrific. You shouldn't have never been allowed in. The jury did not buy into that, by the way, Ronnie said, right? The jury did not buy into this whole motive of jealousy thing that was, this narrative that was put out there by the Commonwealth. Like, oh, here are the girls from Aruba. You can see that Karen was so jealous and that's why she did this on purpose. So she didn't like these people. They were not her friends, even though Jeanine Pirro would like you to think that. So now that we see this in its full context, she didn't like these people. She didn't like all the drinking that was going on. Anybody who's ever been in a relationship with a person who's a big drinker and/or/slash alcoholic, because I don't know his actual status and whether or not he was an alcoholic, but we read some text messages and a lot of people may think that he was a big drinker. And if you've ever been in a relationship with a big drinker, the best decisions are not always made. Okay. And so she's getting at that a little bit here. And we also do know that his blood alcohol content at autopsy was something like 0.28. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was around there. And so I am not disparaging the dead. I am not victim blaming or shaming, but his blood alcohol level was 0.28, which is more than 3 times the legal limit. And understand that when it was taken at autopsy, it probably had decreased a little bit. Okay. He wanted to go out and party more, and she just wanted to go home. And Ronnie's the juror, for those of you just joining, that did the interview with Turtle Boy on Saturday night. I call him Aiden because that's his name. He said that a lot of them were just hung on the fact that, she was there and he was there and they were both drinking. And so therefore we thought she must have done something. Right. And that's scary and wild, but that's what he said.
Have you been able to start a new social life, a new dating life since this?
No, I have my friends that were always in my life. I'm closer to them than ever. And it's been kind of a bittersweet silver lining is I don't know that I ever would have known my friends and family had this in them to be there for me in this way. So I feel very fortunate. And I've met so many new people. And that's enough of a life for me right now is, we go out for dinner just to get out, and we end up just kind of hungered down over a table discussing the case. And I value their input, and I'm content with my social life, even though it's really just socializing about the case.
How big is Karen Reed's inner circle?
My inner circle, half of it's my attorneys, who we just talk so much. There's always so much ground to cover, and we can't wait until trial starts to really begin strategizing or going through the details.
Yeah, there's like some chatter going on in the background of this interview. I noticed that too. And I'm trying to hear what they're saying. And I'm like, who's talking? Like in the room. You could hear somebody talking in the room. It's kind of weird. Listen. Keep your circle small. Everyone should just keep their circle small. Don't trust everybody. Tell my kids that all the time. Like, keep your circle small. You don't need a million friends. Keep your circle small.
Talk so much. There's always so much ground to cover, and we can't wait until trial starts to really begin strategizing or going through the details. We do a little bit every day.
Do a lot every day.
We do yeah, I know, I should say we do a little bit in proportion to the total task at hand, but we cover a lot of hours every day. I probably talk to Alan and Liza each 3 or 4 times a day. And I think it makes us all feel good that we're going to be that much more prepared when we have to do this for round 2. But my inner circle, I don't know. It's bigger than it was. It's bigger than it was before, but it feels stronger than it ever was. I know that I can trust the people that I chose to have in my life.
Is that 5, 10?
10 maybe.
Okay.
Really, really tight, it's probably 5.
Alan, have you ever...
And she's very, very lucky to have the family support that she has. Very, very. I had the opportunity to meet her parents more than once. And let me tell you something. They are the kindest, most genuine, stand-up people that you'd ever want to meet. They're warm. They're kind. They are behind their daughter 100%. Her brother, also amazing. Her cousin, Kelly, amazing, has done amazing things to help raise money for her defense. Because you're going to hear Ellen Jackson talk about how much money she owes them. And you're going to hear that they're not taking it. They believe in her innocence so much that they're doing this for free. So hang on. I agree with you, Bob. I've never met anyone ever that makes good decisions when they're hammered. Nope. Nope.
Had a client who's advocated for themselves as much as Karen does?
Not as articulately or as intelligently as Karen does. Karen is an innocent woman falsely accused. She could sit back and say, go handle this. You're the professionals, go deal with it. That is not in her personality. And we're a better team for it. She has an encyclopedic knowledge of literally every single page of the discovery. I've never seen anything like it. She has an analyst's brain. She's got a rapier intelligence that is attendant to this type of analysis. Very, very smart, very motivated. She has no off button. I'm getting texts. I wake up, I'm on the West Coast. So I wake up, she's been awake for 3 hours. And nearly every day, I feel like, damn it, I've fallen back again. I've fallen behind again. Liza and I have to sort of get back on the treadmill and catch up with where Karen is today, because she'll literally just pick something out of the blue. To me, it's out of the blue. To her brain, it makes sense for her to pull this document or pull this report and say, well, have we thought about this paragraph or this sentence or this word in this report here or there? And then we gather together as a team, me and David and Liza and Karen will get on the phone and talk it through. So she's been, more than any other client I've ever seen, any other client I've ever met, she's been at the center of her own defense.
Yeah, she has no off button, which can work in her favor and not in her favor. Bob, you can back me up on this. How rare is it to have a client that is so involved in their defense that they know every single detail, that they're in the war room every single day, that they are so involved in their defense? It's very rare. Once in a while, you get a client like that, but it is, I don't know, 1% of the time. Usually they're just like, go handle it. Just do your thing. And that's good too. But it's also, I mean, especially in such a massive case like this, when you have a defendant that is so involved and that knows every single detail, it's invaluable because, you and I, Bob, anyway, whoever, whatever other lawyers are here, we have lawyer brains. We think in a lawyer way. Karen's a financial analyst by trade. She is also a professor by trade. She's a teacher. She's got a different way of thinking about things. She may come up with certain details that the lawyers didn't think about. And it's very, very rare that you get a client like that. And it's invaluable. It can be invaluable. Now, the fact that she doesn't have an off button, in my opinion, can also work against her because she's so expressive. She is so expressive with her facial expressions. And she probably should never play poker, and she should also has to just do less with her face. She has to do less with her face. We've heard it from the jury, and I've been saying this from the beginning, and she knows it. But she has to do less. Don't turn around and look at your parents. Don't anything that you do or say is going to be held against you and twisted in a certain way. You know, people don't like the fact that she never cried. She's been dealing with this nightmare for over 3 years. I think her tears have already been shed, or she hasn't even had the chance to grieve yet. She's fighting for her life. She's facing up to 20 years in prison for a car accident that didn't happen. It just didn't. Moving on.
She knows she didn't do this. She's motivated to make sure that the truth comes out.
Has she made any seminal decisions in this case? Have we seen any filings that are directly from her decision and her thought process of how things should play out?
The better question is, have we seen any filings that she didn't have a seminal investment in, a decision about, a suggestion about? Every single thing that you've ever seen filed in this case has gone through Karen, at least I mean, some of them are hyper legal, right? But she's educated herself on, she'd make a better lawyer than most lawyers these days. But
I was thinking about that. I wonder if she'll go to law school. I was thinking about that too. Somebody said that in the chat before.
she will have an impact, and she's got a seat at the table in terms of strategy and tactics that we use every single day.
There are so many people who have never met you, but are so invested in your life and the outcome of this case. I know there are some who adamantly support you, but do you ever worry about your safety with the people who do not want to see you succeed in this case?
This is interesting. Come back to the screen if you haven't seen this yet. Do you ever worry about your safety for people who are so against you? Let me hear that question again, because I worry for her safety. We know from certain text messages that have surfaced that certain people were stalking her to her hotel, watching her go in and out of the hotel. Like it's crazy. I hope she has a bodyguard. I think she does. But just listen. Do you ever worry about your safety?
Of this case, I know there are some who adamantly support you, but do you ever worry about your safety with the people who do not want to see you succeed in this case?
I did more earlier on. I feel more insulated now. I feel safer that people know, because if anything ever happened to me or someone that I love, I think a lot of people would know where to look. So that makes me feel safer.
Have you received any credible threats?
Yep, I have. There's been some online that just the fact that someone's brazen enough to even post something like that gives you some insight into their stability or lack thereof.
People showing up at your house.
Yeah, and like that's crazy, right? Trust me, they've got it all documented. They've got it all documented, and I suspect that some of these people have been posting stuff that are real threats, because we've learned from the motion to dismiss that we read on Aidan Kearney's case, drafted by Bradel and Betterow. And for those of you who don't know, Brett Betterow is joining Karen's defense team. We're going to hear that motion tomorrow. We're going to be covering that hearing live. It's going to be crazy. A lot of motions tomorrow on Karen Read. True threats, not just fighting words. They have to be true threats in order to be actionable under the witness intimidation statute of Massachusetts, which is overly broad in my opinion, but there have been a lot of true threats apparently. And trust me when I tell you, they are probably likely, most definitely cataloging all of them for future.
House, calling your private cell phone.
No, that has not. I've really not had my physical boundaries impinged in any way, nor have my parents. I think by and large, very large, there are very friendly people all around me.
Your defense strategy is the most aggressive I've ever seen in a case. You've taken on the DA, you've taken on the judge. How much of that is Karen Read? How much is that the team?
Probably equal parts. The defense strategy comes down to probably 3 or 4 words: get the truth out. That's the defense strategy. It may be more aggressive than you're used to.
Get the truth out. 4 words, just like look the other way. 4 words. And we're going to get a little glimpse into maybe what they feel like they're going to focus on this time. Get the truth out. And I'm sure that Karen had a large part in that. Like, listen, I didn't do this, but we need to get the truth out about who did or who we think did or who somebody came to us days after and told us what happened, that they know what happened, that they know someone who was there. Get the truth out.
The conduct in this case is more dire than I'm used to. I've seen a lot of cases. I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't think I've ever seen a case with as many questions, as many suspect actions, and as much suspect conduct as I've seen in this case. There is unequivocally corruption in this case. There are absolutely cover-ups in this case. There's conduct by law enforcement and the DA's office that the likes of which I've never seen. And my job, our job as a team, is to get that truth out. I'm not going to sit idly by. Our team is never going to sit idly by and let an innocent woman be convicted based on false evidence, false pretenses, cover-ups, agreements and decisions on the other side to hamstring the defense, hamstring our ability to get the truth out. I'm not going to sit idly by to do that. So is it aggressive? Sure, it's aggressive. But a woman's life is in the balance. So yeah, we're going to stay aggressive. We've been aggressive. We're going to stay aggressive until the truth comes out.
I think it was 4 words.
I mean, can you blame him? Like, he's as passionate about this case, probably more passionate about this case than he has been about any other case that he's handled in his career. It is so much more difficult to defend an innocent client than it is to defend a guilty client, because everyone expects the guilty client is going to be convicted. They're going to go to jail. And it is harder to sleep, I would imagine, as a defense attorney, when you know that your client is innocent and what the potential for a conviction would be. A lie unchecked becomes the truth. Has made that into their username, says the Commonwealth doesn't want the truth. I've since learned, someone pointed out to me that that quote, a lie unchecked becomes the truth, or something very similar to that, is a Yahtzee. I'm going to say Yahtzee for YouTube purposes. Please don't type that word in the chat. Yahtzee quote. Those of you who know might know. And it's interesting that, was it Hank Brennan who said that one day in court?
Words at the end of the last trial, and it was, I'm going to declare a mistrial. What was that like for you to take in?
It was the outcome that I had thought about the least. I had thought about the best case scenario, and I always think about the worst because that's how I'm able to process. I have to think it through. How will I deal with this? Who will fight for me if I'm not sitting here to fight for myself? And of course, I thought about an acquittal because I know I deserve it. I had not really thought about a mistrial. It was only a couple days. It was like day 2, the end of day 2 into the deliberations, that both David and Alan told me separately when we were in the church next door that this could be a mistrial. And the prospect of that at that time during jury deliberations was a gut punch. But then when it was declared, it was such a relief that I was free. I was free to sleep in my own bed, hug my parents, continue to work on this case. My immediate next worry was, I hope I have my team available to go to battle all over again. But those moments, waiting to hear 12 strangers determine what is going to physically happen to you for the foreseeable future or forever, when you're able to walk out a free woman or man, it was an incredible relief. You just see your life it can just be taken away from you.
As we had,
And that is why the defense did not ask the judge to pull the jury, because you run the risk as a defense attorney that the jury is going to come back and be like, oh yeah, well, we did acquit. I mean, we did convict on count 2, but you said not to come back. And the fact that the SJC hung their hat on the defense not asking the judge to pull the jury was wild to me. You hear the mistrial, you're free, you leave, you run around, you run out of there, you get out. Because you run the risk of a conviction, right? Thanks, Bob. Bob says an innocent Bob Mata is here from Defense Diaries. An innocent client is the most terrifying client for a defense attorney. Yeah. Moving on.
To the second trial, one of the possible outcomes here could be a conviction. That could be prison time. How much have you thought about that?
I think about it every day, about prison time, and it doesn't frighten me the way it did 3 years ago. I was arrested 3 years ago tomorrow, and
Okay, so that would have been, was she arrested on February 2nd or February, I guess it was February 1st, right? Because her arraignment was February 2nd. Didn't they hold her overnight? So I guess the interview was done on the 29th and maybe the 31st.
I've been in jail twice
Of this year.
as a result of this prosecution.
Yeah, she was in jail once when she was first arrested on February 1st. She was arraigned February 2nd. The second time she was arrested was in June when they upgraded the charges to murder. I think they held her overnight until the arraignment the next day, I think.
I've now accepted the fact that what's happening to me and the awareness this case has raised and the eyes it's opened, that is what my purpose is in Massachusetts and whatever effect this has in other parts of the country. And even if a jury got it wrong or there's even more nefarious behavior on behalf of this prosecution, then just even more awareness will be raised. So I can accept whatever happens. Nothing will ever get the best of me or break me down.
There have been sort of these unsubstantiated claims in the atmosphere that there might have been some funny business with the jurors who were dismissed.
Right.
Is this a real concern that you have? Is this something that you are looking at, or have you just dismissed it as rumor?
I'll never just dismiss that as rumor. Something like that is, it's too convenient for the prosecution for us to just dismiss out of hand. Do I have any evidence, specific evidence, that there was jury tampering? I don't have any specific evidence of it. Do I think that there are questions that should be asked? Do I think that there are questions that have been raised about the way the jurors were dismissed, and who was dismissed very specifically? There were jurors who very, very clearly throughout.
Yeah, listen up. This goes to who was picked as alternates at the end of the trial after the foreman was picked by the judge. Everybody's number went into a little bingo thing, and they were spun around. I don't think the attorneys were shown the numbers that went into the bingo thing, which is normally done. Bob, you can back me up on that. But the people that were chosen as alternates were all pro Karen. So listen to what he says.
It's impossible to sit 8 feet away from 12 or 15 folks and not get an idea, just a chemistry idea of where those jurors are one way or the other based on certain, body language and facial expressions, et cetera, sighs and huffs and arm folds and leaning forward, leaning back, things of that nature based on certain witnesses. It's interesting that 3 of probably the most stalwart jurors who we believed, and I will go to my grave believing, were very supportive of the defense, ended up cast aside within minutes, not days or hours, within minutes of the jurors deliberating, within minutes of me standing up and giving my final summation. Those 3 jurors were gone. So is that a query? Absolutely. Have I dismissed it? I'll never dismiss it. Is there anything to do about it? Not so sure.
One of the state troopers who...
Right. Is there anything to do about it? Not so sure. Can't really prove it. It was Fanning. It was Trooper Fanning who was in charge of the jury. So listen to this.
Thing to do about it? Not so sure.
One of the state troopers who was involved with the Norfolk DA's office and on the periphery of the investigation was also responsible for the jury?
Right. He wasn't that far on the periphery of the investigation. He was involved in the investigation. He was a direct supervisor over the individuals that were testifying and over and about whom we had leveled some very, very serious claims and ended up proving those claims during the course of direct and cross-examination, the presentation of our case. That person, that supervisor, we found out well into the trial. As a matter of fact, at the end of the trial, we found out is the very person who was governing the jurors. That's a question that should be raised. That is an issue that should be teased out. Should never, ever happen.
Same. Fanning confirmed now, and they hit it. And then Emma said, wait, where is it? You guys are chatting so quickly. It's going right by. I thought Emmy says, I thought the Fanning thing was a rumor. Insane to get it confirmed. Me too. I never had confirmation of it until just exactly right now. Trooper Fanning was in charge of that jury. That's bizarre. Lieutenant Fanning? Lieutenant? Was he a lieutenant? Yeah. Wow. Yep.
That is the very definition of a conflict of interest.
Is that standard in Massachusetts for just the DA's office to assign whoever they want to go be the sort of,
supervisor
of the jury? Yeah.
The is it standard in Massachusetts? I hope not. I've never seen that in my life. But if I had a nickel for every time I said I've never seen this in my life as it pertains to the Massachusetts justice system, the criminal justice system, I'd have a lot of nickels. I've never.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Alan Jackson, smooth as butter. Who watched the Saturday Night Live 50th last night? Did you see? Coffee talk, talk amongst yourselves. Now you know where I get that from. Talk amongst yourselves. Coffee talk, smooth as butter. He's smooth as butter. Let me see some butter emojis in the chat. We have an emoji for that. Smooth as butter. None of us who are practicing attorneys for 3 decades have ever seen anything like this before. That's a lot of nickels.
Seen that happen. It should never have happened. It's abhorrent to the system of justice in which we work. Those kinds of conflicts of interest they just can't stand. But they did, and we weren't even told about it. I mean, that was one of the most galling parts of that revelation, is that wait, this has been happening under our nose the entire trial, and I'm just now finding out about it. We would have made hay about it as soon as.
Fanning's been in charge of the jury the entire time. Was he listening in? Was he, I'm not accusing this man of anything, but it seemed to me that a lot of people were tweeting out about a lot of stuff who may or may not have been fed information from who knows who about what was going on inside the jury room. And that is frightening. And they didn't find out about it until after the trial. And you can bet your bottom dollar that there's probably going to be a motion in limine about it, about who's allowed to be in charge of the jury. It was wild. They've got the Massachusetts State Police overseeing the jury, and they've got the Massachusetts State Police serving the motions on Boston 25 for the outtakes, serving as process servers. Yeah, it could be part of the motion to dismiss, Tracy. Good point. And they just find out about it after the trial, but it's not an appellate issue because there's a mistrial. It's outrageous. Outrageous. The audacity. Every crazy rumor that I take with a grain of salt turns out to be true. Says we're running on caffeine. Yep. But was he in the jury room? I don't know. Was he listening outside the door? Was there a ring count? I have no idea. Don't know. I don't think he was in there with him during deliberations, but he collected the notebooks at the end of the day. I don't know how they ever thought that this was reasonable. This reminds me a lot of like Murdoch, Sled and Murdoch, and how Sled was alleged to have been not so on the up and up, and then Sled is in charge of now going and interviewing. Like, it was just wild, right? It has reminiscence of Murdoch to me a little bit. Right. That's what the bailiff is supposed to do, says Bobby. Yep. No, they had Trooper Fanning, who was involved in the investigation of this case, heading up the jury, being in charge of them.
We found out, and we did, but it was 10 minutes before I was about to stand up and close the case.
Some of the things that Michael Proctor said about.
That's right. I'm a brat brings this up. One of the jurors allegedly, one of the jurors was dismissed before deliberations because somebody said, I think told the judge that one of the jurors was overheard in a bar talking about the case. And I think they were just dismissed. And that's what Amber Bratt says. I'm sure Fanning followed some around like the one at the bar. Wow.
You were objectively vicious. What was it like to be there in court and listen to all those texts?
Another relief. So many moments in court were a relief to me because I've known these things in some cases for years and had to keep it amongst our inner circle. Nothing Michael Proctor texted and admitted out loud in court about me would ever offend me. I'm proud of my overcoming of health crises. Proctor was just letting the public know what I've known about Michael Proctor, who he really is. And it's just luck that, as I know it, Michael Proctor doesn't have a daughter. But
Amen,
those
sis. Amen, sis. And how did he find out about her leaky blanky blank? How did he know within 16 hours about her medical conditions? How did he know all that stuff? Who do you think told him that?
text messages, as vile as they are, I think are the least of his offenses.
Alan, you could have had Michael Proctor read one or two of the texts. You spent hours having him read those out loud. I'm sure that was done by design.
It was. It was. Everything that we did in that cross-examination of Michael Proctor was done by design. I wanted to make sure that I had an audience of 12 folks, an undefined 12 folks sitting.
Well, not really. Had a worldwide audience, but okay. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, everything was by design and it was very well done, very well orchestrated, very well. Even when the witnesses didn't want to answer the questions, he kept going. He ain't got no quit.
In that jury box who were going to make a judgment about, not just about Karen Reed, they were going to make a judgment about the prosecution and about the investigating officer in charge of the prosecution or in charge of the investigation. They needed to see and hear a full panoply of who this person really is and get down to the fabric of the human being. That's the only way they could assess the veracity of the entire investigation. As goes the investigating officer, goes the investigation. And the prosecution, the Commonwealth, wanted to hide that. They wanted to mask it. They didn't want to give those data over to us. They didn't want to give those texts to us. They tried mightily in front of the court to get those suppressed. Why? Because as goes the investigator, goes the prosecution. The texts were vile. They were disgusting. They were not just, as Michael Proctor tried to slough them off, regrettable. Regrettable, Mr. Proctor? Seriously? That's the best you can come up with in terms of what the things that you're saying and the bias that you're showing about a criminal defendant and accused who has yet to be convicted of anything? That's the best you can say is it's regrettable. It's far beyond regrettable. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. That man should not ever carry a badge. That man should not ever carry a gun. He should never have any authority over the community members ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Are you surprised that he's...
Yeah, and so far the Massachusetts State Police Trial Board is not finished with his hearings. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 more hearing days at least in March. And, it's my opinion that they'll probably wait for their final decision on whether or not they're going to terminate him until after Karen's trial is over. I don't know how long they can push it. I don't know what their administrative rules are with regard to how long it takes them to render a decision, but they've already had 2 full trial board days on Proctor and his suspension / what's going to happen next to him. So that's interesting. The cop daddies are here. The Las Vegas Cops TV are here. I did a show with them over the weekend. Check it out. It was awesome. They say Proctor's unbelievable. What an ass. Yep. And that's being kind. Yep. And he's still texting inappropriately because we saw some of those messages come out from July 1st, which was when he was texting Adam Lally about being worried about the verdict. So who knows what else was in those text messages? It's just beyond my comprehension. after he was cross-examined with his text messages that had already gotten out, that he continued to text message with the prosecutor in this case on at least one occasion that we know of so far. July 1st, the day the mistrial was declared, before the verdict, apparently, before the mistrial.
Been fighting for his job?
Yeah. Yeah. What I think he should probably do is put his tail between his legs and get out of the jurisdiction and go find some other line of work, someplace where he can't hurt people.
How will Michael Proctor play in the retrial?
Oh, he's going to play large in the retrial. They can't.
Listen.
The prosecution, I think, probably.
Listen, how's Proctor going to play in the retrial? We've all been talking about this. They're not going to call Proctor. Alan will. Listen.
He wants very badly to take some magic eraser, some pixie dust, and erase Michael Proctor from the minds of the public, and certainly not from the minds of the new jury who's going to come in and assess this case. They're not going to be able to do it, not as long as we're breathing. Michael Proctor is going to be a part of this case, whether he likes it or not.
Because they don't necessarily have to call him, but obviously you have a right to call him as a witness.
Correct. And we will, if they don't call him, we will. We're not going to allow the Commonwealth to hide the truth from the last jury or this upcoming jury.
He's touched everything, everything.
That's right.
There's no part of the case that he hasn't affected. No part of
His hands are all over it, and they're not going to let that just not be told, that story not be told. It's coming in because they're going to call him, even if Brennan doesn't. Good.
the case that he hasn't affected. He was in charge of the entire investigation. The personality and the character of the investigation is the personality and the character of Michael Proctor. They're one and the same.
That's right. Great
And we'll
point.
make sure that that's disclosed to the jury.
The feds devoted a lot of time and resources investigating what happened here. We are now years removed from that, and there's been no action taken. Why is that?
Well, I don't know that there's been no action taken. We don't know about any action taken. There's lots of, it's like
But no indictments.
no indictments, but it's like looking at a duck on water, Ted. The duck is very still, it's very stable, but underneath the little flippers are going crazy. I don't know what's happening just beneath the surface. I don't know what's happening. I'm not privy to what the federal investigation is actually, where it's going or how far it's led to this point. I do know that they were seminal in providing us with information. And when I say us, it's important to note, providing both sides. They didn't pick a side or choose a side in this. They provided everything that they decided was disclosable. They provided to both sides. The Commonwealth decided they didn't want to use it. As a matter of fact,
That's right. The Commonwealth could have called the crash daddies. They could have called Dr. Rentschler and Dr. Wolf to the stand, but they didn't. I remember it was 3,074 pages that were dumped on both sides pursuant to a 2E request by the feds. And they both got them. And I remember what Laura McLaughlin said, and they're going to talk about it. Hang on.
tried mightily to keep us from using it. Thank goodness cooler heads prevailed, and we were able to utilize much of what their investigation or what their disclosure.
Cool heads will prevail. That's part of my theme song. That's part of my intro. What? That's crazy. Hold on.
Heads prevailed, and we were able to utilize much of what their investigation or what their disclosure consisted of. But if it hadn't been for them, the Commonwealth had been hiding evidence from us for years. And it wasn't until the federal investigation and revelation came to pass that we actually sort of were able to look behind the curtain, which is where we should have been looking in the first place. So it was.
But wait, they still turned over evidence to you after the trial was over in October. You got some more Sally Port video, and then you got some Sally Port video like last week of the Lexus backing up. So they've been hiding evidence since day one. Wow.
It was central to our presentation of our defense.
Leah Foley will be the third U.S. attorney, as far as we know, who will at least touch this case.
Right.
Do you expect that having a new head of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston will change anything?
I don't know. I've been incredibly impressed with the U.S. Attorney's Office in terms of the leadership under Ms. Foley's predecessors. Joshua Levy was central in making certain decisions about what to disclose to us, where the investigation was going. Again, I don't know what the full parameters of the investigation are. But I can say that I was very, very happy with what they did and what they disclosed, trying to get the truth out previously. And I hope Ms. Foley does the same thing. I'm looking forward to her continuing the investigation. I hope she does.
When you look at the scope of the federal investigation and all the things that were done, you received, 3,000 pages from that investigation. Are there other things that might have been done or have been done that you think that should also be turned over or could be turned over?
I don't know. Again, Ted, we're sort of operating a little bit in the blind because I don't know what the full contours of the federal investigation consist of. So it's not like I can say, oh, well, they did this, but I don't have that information. I don't know what the this is. The only thing that I have is the information that they provided to both sides. And then we culled through it to decide, oh, okay, is this relevant to our case? And nearly every page of it was highly, highly relevant material.
Yep. Leah Foley is the new U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts that has taken over Josh Levy's position.
One of the things that the federal government did was hire this outside accident reconstruction team who would have no vested interest in the outcome of this case. Right. How important was those two accident reconstructionists coming in saying no way, no how?
I cannot describe the gravity of those two witnesses. First of all, they were unassailable in terms of their credibility and their credentials. There was nobody who testified
100%.
who was more credentialed to talk about the issues that were attendant to them than those two gentlemen, those two doctors, PhDs.
Right, and the fact that that Ronnie, the juror, came out and said that they were a distractor because they didn't know who hired them is very, very interesting. Very interesting information for the defense. And now the defense needs to hire them.
The fact that we didn't hire them, they can't be considered hired guns by the prosecution. The fact that the Commonwealth didn't even know their name. They were completely independent third parties who did not know Karen Reed or this case, and they did not know that their assessment was attendant to Karen Reed or this case. Central to their testimony. Completely credible. I can't describe the gravity of those two witnesses and the impact that it had on the trial and getting to the truth. And what they said echoed everything that we had been learning during the course of our investigation on the defense side, which is that car was not damaged by hitting a human body. It did not hit a person. And John O'Keefe was not injured by being hit by a vehicle.
100%.
No way, no how.
100%.
It didn't happen.
John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. That's your case. That is your case. That is your case.
As one of the witnesses testified, the physics don't lie. The science doesn't lie. The car did not make contact with John O'Keefe. She didn't do this.
That's right.
Karen, when the ARCA information came in that document dump, I guess, what was your emotion kind of reading what they decided?
I didn't really know the details of it until trial because I did not have the same access to those materials that the attorneys did.
Right. The defendant was not allowed to look at the TUI docs. It was only the attorneys. So that's interesting. She didn't really know until trial. Really interesting. Hang on.
Because
decided.
I didn't really know the details of it until trial because I did not have the same access to those materials that the attorneys did because of the federal protective order. It was another moment, and there's been so many, that I realized, to put it mildly, how underhanded this prosecution is, that a district attorney can be privy to that accident reconstruction report and continue to pursue this case,
Right.
and not call Drs. Wolf and Rentschler.
Right. They have one job to do. They have one job to do, to seek the truth.
One job.
They had this information in front of them. As Karen just said, why wouldn't they call them? They should have called them. Their only job is to seek the truth, not to seek a conviction. And the truth is, the physics don't lie. The car didn't hit John. He wasn't.
That's right. Vinnie Politan screams about it all the time. They have one job to get to the truth. We're not just trying to get convictions here. We're getting to the truth. They had this information. They didn't want to bring it to the jury because you know what? It hurt their whole theory of the case. They wanted to pin it on the girl. They wanted to pin it on the girl. The Commonwealth can't handle the truth, as KPT. Jackson's saying there's still a chance with the feds. Yeah, the investigation's ongoing. It's not concluded. They're not privy to what's going on. They don't know who the target is, but it's still ongoing. Federal investigations take a long, long, long time. This is so good. It is so good, right?
Killed by being hit by a car. And they not only did they not seek that truth, they tried to suppress it.
And their version of events was almost it was laughable. It was laughable.
It was.
It was
laughable.
illogical. It just did. The body just landed. The phone just landed. A side swipe with no bruises. It's not as if they had qualified, credentialed, advanced educated experts to offer another version of events. They didn't have that, and they chose to ignore that, and they chose to present to the court and to the public in a hearing that those federal materials, 3,000 pages, were 90 to 95% consistent with their theory of the case. The theory of the case is a car accident.
Right. I screamed about this, and you guys remember this. The thumbnail of that show says something like the feds ruled. Oh, I did her dirty on that.
The federal
That pause. Laura McLaughlin, the ADA, sitting next to Adam Lally, who is second sharing him throughout the trial, said in open court, I have reviewed all 3,074 pages, and I am representing to this court that it is 95% in line with our theory, Your Honor. And I remember this because they only had like a weekend to look through it. And the defense was like, we have not had a chance to go through all of this yet. And Ms. McLaughlin said, yes, I have. I have. And it's 90% or 95% in line with our case. I remember that day. I remember us screaming at each other into a closet. Listen to it again. I wish I had the clip pulled up, but I don't.
In a hearing that those chose to present to the court and to the public in a hearing that those federal materials, 3,000 pages, were 90 to 95% consistent with their theory of the case. The theory of the case is a car accident. The federal materials included a report that said there wasn't a car accident. That's the case.
Right.
That's 95% of the case. And it was inconsistent. It wasn't just inconsistent. It was diametrically opposed to the Commonwealth's theory of the case or lie of the case.
Lie of the case. Lie of the case. I
Jan-
love it. Cookie Carolinian's pointing out in that. Yeah, she also said that there was nothing exculpatory in there. That's what she said. That's what Ms. McLaughlin said. You're getting a little glimpse into how smart Karen Reed really is, because finally, there's an interview where they let her speak and they don't chop up everything that she says. And I'm hoping that this interview is going to give a different public perception of who Karen Reed really is. Nobody knows her case better than she does. Their lie of the case. I'm going to have to just put this a little bit faster because I have a hard stop. So let's just put it just to 1 1/4. And I'll try and stop talking so much. But there's so much to say, like Dave Matthews would say.
January 29th, 2022, you said it was possible you might have hit John. How could that even be in the realm if you saw him going into the house?
Because it never crossed my mind that the people we were with, middle-aged adults with children, some of the children were with us that night at the bar. It did not cross my mind for several days that they did this to John, that John was treated like a piece of garbage. These were women and men, some I knew better than others, that I knew to be normal people. And I went through every possibility. He was near the road and he was dying. And I didn't think he was purposely put in that place.
In your opinion,
I mean, would your head go there if you pulled up? Would your head go there that someone else did this? When you're in shock and horror and you see your boyfriend near death or already dead on the side of the road in the snow, close to where you left him off the night before? Probably not.
there have been a few names that have surfaced in this third-party culpability theory. Who do you think, if John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know.
Yep.
Somebody other than Karen. Somebody other.
That's the clip that we heard earlier when they were first released. We don't know who did it. We don't know what happened, but he was not hit by a car, and it was not Karen. That's it. That's the case.
Other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John. But who it was specifically, others know, and they're not talking.
What is the most important piece of evidence that exists in this case that people could look at and say, hey, there's no way that she could have done this? Is there one thing?
To me, there is. That the only physical evidence connecting me to where John's body was found, which I will not call the crime scene, the only physical evidence, pieces of plastic taillight, were not found until after the state police had possession of that very taillight.
And when you couple that, you're looking for one thing. When you couple that with the testimony of the experts, the third party, absolutely qualified experts, that there was no car accident. The car did not hit John, and John was not hit by a
hammering
car.
it.
So the taillight pieces, when they were found and when your car was taken, to you, that is the most crucial element of your defense.
It's closely followed by other evidence, but to me, yes.
You've had a private investigator from the start. Is that private investigator still running down tips, and will we see any new revelations at the retrial?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have not slowed down our investigation one iota. So
Oh,
I
good.
expect, I'm not at liberty to say exactly what might be revealed that's new and different in the second trial, but I expect there will be some new information that comes from our investigation as well.
People
Good.
send you tips?
All the time. All the time. Yeah, the harder part is not getting the tips. The harder part is separating the wheat from the chaff. What tips are valuable enough to sort of chase down, and which just seem like we'd be chasing our tail. But no, we get tips every single day. The public is very, very interested in getting to the truth of what actually happened to John O'Keefe.
Karen, it's been reported that your defense is running about $5 million. Is that correct? And how do you pay for that?
Give or take a few million. That's a back of the envelope calculation, and it's certainly no pressure put on me in any way by my attorney.
I love this interview because it's completely humanizing her. It's completely humanizing her. It's a back of the envelope calculation. This is so good. Ted Daniels should win an award for this interview. And the editing, whoever edited this should win an award, because the editing is fire. Because I'm not even seeing really any cuts here. They're letting her talk. He's asking the right questions. She's getting out the things that she wants to get out. Alan's getting out the things that he needs to get out. And they are obviously telling the truth. Says, I just wanted to give somebody credit for that, but it went by too fast.
The longer this goes, the harder they work. The more
They're not putting any pressure on her to pay it. That's what they're saying. Listen.
calculation, and it's certainly no pressure put on me in any way by my attorneys. The longer this goes, the harder they work, the more time goes into it.
How do you pay for that?
Right now, I'm paying for everything entirely on the charity of supporters. People I know, former colleagues, people, many, thousands of people I don't know. I've liquidated my retirement. I've sold my home, and everything else is from supporters, and it's not a small number. It's approaching 750,000, and I hope the supporters and the donors know that this is their defense. They're marshaling this. I could early, but it's been 3 years. I've not had income. I had 2 incomes, now I have none. So I'm just incredibly grateful and appreciative. And it was funny when we launched the defense fund, which Alan helped me do logistically through his firm. I was thanking donors the early days, anything sizable or even small ones, because it's not the nominal amount. It's what people can afford or their intention, and especially from strangers. And I was thanking people, and now I can't, but I just want them to know. I see them all. My family members, my close friends see them, and other supporters see. Our defense fund page has kind of become its own social media, that people look to see what other parts of this country are people closely following and donating to this defense. So it's keeping us going financially, of course, but also emotionally.
In the world, the world is watching. I've pinned the legal fund website in the chat. If anybody's interested in donating, every dollar helps. They've raised so far $676,000 and change. This is going to be a very expensive retrial. Every little bit helps. Every little bit helps.
It's important to know, not to interrupt, Ted, but it's important to know that although the attorney time involved is in the multi-million-dollar range, $5, probably $6 million between Mr. Yannetti, myself, Ms. Little, other lawyers who have worked on the case, other individuals, investigators, et cetera. Most of us, all of the lawyers, are not getting paid that. We have not taken that money. We're not going to take that money. That's the value that has amassed of the legal services that's been required to mount this defense, but we're not taking the money because she doesn't have the money. And the reason that David Yannetti is doing this, the reason that I'm doing this, the reason that Liza Little is doing this, the reason that Marty Weinberg and Bob Alessi and others are doing this is because it's the right thing to do. None of us are willing to stand by and watch her get railroaded or steamrolled by the power of the government when she did not do this.
Wow. 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 If you didn't hear that, rewind it and listen to it again. That's integrity. We're not taking the money. Oh, sorry to do you dirty, Alan, with the pause there. We're not taking her money because we can't stand by and watch an innocent woman be railroaded. I know it does make you want to cry, right? Everyone hates lawyers, right? Everyone hates lawyers, but how could you hate these lawyers? There are good lawyers out there, just like there are good cops out there, just like there's good priests out there. They're not taking her money. She doesn't have it. The money that you guys are donating, and so many of you have donated money, is going to pay for experts. Printing costs. You know how much it costs to print appellate briefs? You'd be amazed at how much it costs. Paying support staff. Paying the experts. It's expensive. They're not taking the money. They can't stand by and watch an innocent woman be railroaded. They would not be able to sleep at night.
We've all decided as a team, we will be here for as long as it takes, and we will fight as hard as it takes to make sure that the truth comes out.
You said you received $750,000 roughly in donations. Who would we be most surprised to hear who's donated to you?
I wouldn't disclose that to you, but some well-known, maybe one of the most well-known names at my former employer.
I don't know who that is, but that's interesting.
But as I said, that means just as much to me as someone from Alabama who's given me $25 from her last paycheck.
Does that person's name start with an A?
No, he was, it's a he. And just a little more directly involved in it.
That's just good reporting. He's just going to keep asking it
Yeah.
until he figures it out.
Abby certainly has the money.
I wish, Ted, I wish. And that's not for lack of trying on my part.
The largest group of people who've donated to you are your former coworkers.
Not in volume of donors, but in proportion of the actual amount donated. Yeah, about half has come from former colleagues.
Wow.
To whom I'm incredibly grateful. And it's kind of taken the sting out of no longer being a part of that world and seeing them every day and doing what I love to do, that I'm still connected, and it's a different life that I have now and a different purpose, and they're contributing to it.
And it's interesting, the perception that she's got this multi-million-dollar defense and this juggernaut defense. It's just not correct. It's not accurate. Yes, she has a very valuable defense working on her behalf, but the money that the donors and the public are providing, the money that that's being given to the defense fund is paying for the investigators, the expert witnesses, travel for the experts, hotels for the people are flying in from all over the country, and we have to account for that, a massive amount of logistics, getting people here so that they can testify, getting people here so that they can do the research. If we need to use research attorneys or other staff, that's what that's paying for. It's not paying for legal fees. None of us are taking legal fees.
None of us
For the
are
retrial, you're
taking legal fees. When's the last time you ever heard that ever from a defense? None of us are ever taking legal fees. I know. We heard it in Carly Gregg's case. Bridget Todd and her co-counsel did not take any payment from the Gregg family for that defense. It's the only time I've ever heard it. That was a much shorter trial. They're not taking any money.
a new special prosecutor. Who would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan?
I don't care who I face.
We heard this.
I have the truth. I have the best attorneys that money is not paying for. Do your worst.
What
Do
was
your worst.
your take on how the DA's office performed at the first trial?
How they performed, it felt like they just wore the jury down. It felt like a lot of repetition. I don't think the jurors saw the lack of injuries to John's body or his right arm for, I want to say it was week 5, but maybe it just felt like week 5 and it was week 3. They were clearly, and I understand why, belaboring insignificant points and barely touching on the biggest parts of the evidence.
Questions that they couldn't answer. They just decided the prosecution had a design. They were just going to try the case by volume instead of by validity.
Yes,
Put it all out.
volume instead of validity. I love it. It's a thumbnail. Volume instead of validity. We heard about the snow, the clearing of the apron, the high top tables, and the band at the waterfall for weeks before we ever heard anything about the injuries to John O'Keefe, right? Wild.
Out there.
Put everything out there, and the inconvenient facts that show that John O'Keefe was not killed by Karen Reed would just get buried somewhere in the middle. Our job was to tease that out, which we did. Doesn't matter if they try to do it again. We'll do the same thing. Our job is to make sure that the truth gets out there.
I think ask your parents the same question. If you're framed, someone's got to run that, direct that. Who is that person?
I think you know who that person is. I think there's people who are enabling and there's people who are actually
Orchestrating.
moving pieces.
But is your theory that it's people inside that house, 34 Fairview, who sort of called the shots from the beginning, or someone high up in law enforcement?
I don't know the interconnections, the interpersonal relationships among these people. I have a strong personal opinion that what has motivated this persecution of me is power. There were familiarities among players that never should have happened. There's a sleeve of homicide in the Norfolk DA's office, as there is in the other counties of Massachusetts. And yet the person assigned to investigate this case, ostensibly investigate this case, lives a mile down the street from the crime scene. But I believe the players with the most influence are motivated more by power and playing God. And they're trying to play God with my life.
Not to protect.
Trying to play God with my life. Wow, that's powerful.
People.
People are being protected. I don't know if the motivation was actually to protect those people, but it's a byproduct of it. I mean, there are names, and we know those names, that were hidden from me. I only knew who was in that house from the rumor mill, from people I knew in Canton, and it ended up becoming true once we pushed and filed motions and flew the team in. And 2 years later, a year and a half later, we're getting police reports of names, people that were in that house that I did not know about, or they were trying to make sure I didn't know about early in 2022.
And you can't have one without the other. You can't have a motivation to put the case on Karen Reed without also being motivated to protect yourself or to protect others that are with you. It would take a real investigation, a true investigation by their own folks to reveal who is part of this. Is there one person that's behind it? I don't think so. My personal opinion. I think it's a combination of folks. But I don't think that we're ever going to see that true investigation because the people that are in power don't want the truth.
They don't want you to see
Isn't that
it.
what the feds did?
That's ostensibly what the feds did and are continuing to do. I don't know the full contour of what the federal investigation is revealing, but I can certainly say that, to Karen's point, there were people that were never disclosed to us in any reports being in that home that weren't revealed until the federal investigators got involved, and some folks started getting cornered. They realized, oh, hang on, I can't suppress this anymore. There are reasons why I have to now reveal this truth. And then ultimately it was revealed. Why is that? Why were folks being hidden from us in police reports, et cetera, as being in the house, as being pertinent to this investigation? They didn't do anything. Who the hell cares?
Do we know who all those people are now? Were they all part of the first
We
round?
think we do.
Yeah, at least we think we do.
And by the way, Ted, I think it's probably half of the people that were in 34 Fairview, half of what we think the total number is, were interviewed for the first time with their defense attorneys, with their criminal defense attorneys.
Wow. Wow. And we know who those people are because it was not the initial players. It wasn't Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, Julie Albert, Chris Albert. They didn't have attorneys with them. It was, I guess what she's saying is the people who were not interviewed until 18 months later, right? Perhaps. Colin Albert, and I'm just guessing here. Who were the people who weren't interviewed for 18 months or a year? Some of them weren't even interviewed until after they testified at the federal grand jury. Allie McCabe, Colin Albert, Sarah Levinson. I mean, you guys can name them better than I can. Tristan Morris, Caitlin Albert was never interviewed until after she testified, I think, in front of the federal grand jury, right? Julie Nagel. It's interesting, right? Let's hear that again. Although Ally McCabe wasn't inside Fairview, so she's saying the people that were inside Fairview.
People that were in.
At least we think we
And by the way, Ted, I think it's probably half of the people that were in 34 Fairview, half of what we think the total number is, were interviewed for the first time with their defense attorneys, with their criminal defense attorneys. What a luxury. What a luxury. Some were interviewed in the first week of this case, the week following John's murder, in their attorneys' homes. Others were interviewed the fall of 2023 in their defense attorneys' offices.
And that's interesting because in none of those witness statements that we've read did it ever say also present was so-and-so Esquire, the attorney, right? Not one of those witness statements that we've seen ever says that there is also an attorney present. Wow.
Convenient, and what a luxury.
And I've never seen that before either. We were talking earlier about things that are anomalous, an anomaly about this case. I've never seen that before, where like the entire panoply of eyewitnesses, supposedly eyewitnesses for the government, they'll lawyer up immediately. They're all interviewed with lawyers sitting there. Why? If you're just telling the truth, what do you need to lawyer up for?
Do you think it's just because of the exposure of this case, though?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's self-preservation.
Will you bring any new witnesses to the retrial? Will we see anyone new at the retrial from your side?
I think a lot of that depends on what we get from the Commonwealth. We're still waiting to get the full bucket of information that the Commonwealth is amassing for the second trial. But as soon as they let us know what their witness list looks like, then that will dictate in no small part what our witness list is going to look like. But I fully expect there will be
They're in
some
the
new
bullpen.
witnesses. Yeah, we're not waiting on that. We're pretty good at figuring out that we can telegraph their punches. So we have not been sitting on our hands. I can put it that way. And will you see new faces? Yes, I expect you will.
We're 3 years removed from what happened.
We've already heard about some new witnesses that are coming in because the prosecution has filed their certificate of compliance. So they're supposed to be done turning over their witnesses and evidence, but you never know with a case like this.
And you said that you're still receiving
Or with this
important
case.
evidence from the state. Why wouldn't have that been turned over for the first trial?
Because it's exculpatory.
That's the
Ding,
question
ding,
we've been
ding,
asking.
ding.
Why wasn't this turned over during the first trial? And you probably will see that question posed in a formal motion that we will have before the court, before the trial starts. Because that's the right question to ask. Why the hell? You've been prosecuting this case for 3 years. We should have had every scrap of information available to you in our possession before the first trial. We have now learned that did not happen.
Karen, can you give me an example of something that you haven't?
Nope.
Well, the
No.
CPD video was just publicized.
Yeah.
It's in a
Yeah,
public motion.
yeah, this isn't the place to talk about it. We're about to have a hearing on it. So I'd rather just.
This isn't going to
defer
air
that.
though till after.
She'll
No,
probably be not deciding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
we haven't
exactly.
had the hearing on the recent video that was turned over where Karen's Lexus is backing into the Canton Sallyport. That was good of Alan to stop it there. Good.
She might not decide it for weeks or months. So I'd rather defer that question.
You've asked the state's highest court to intervene and essentially dismiss the murder charge. How closely do you follow the decisions that come out every day from that court?
We pretty much take the pulse of that docket every day.
Mhm.
We're very interested. We think that we have nothing but the deepest respect for the SJC. One of the beauties of the appellate court process is that the more elevated the courts go, the less associated they are with sort of the local issues that are attendant to a particular prosecution, a particular courtroom, a particular subject matter. So they're by design supposed to be elevated to a point where they can just look at something antiseptically, look at it legally and factually, and make a decision. We're looking very, very forward to the SJC reviewing, ultimately making a decision about, and then coming out with a holding concerning the acquittal of Karen on count 1 and count 3, the murder charge. And
This was obviously filmed before the SJC denied the appeal. So that's what he's talking about.
the leaving the scene with injury charge. And when they do come out with that holding, my hope is that it's in our favor. It should be in our favor. We deeply believe legally that it will be in Karen's favor, and that will change the complexion of the second trial significantly.
Karen, aside from the DA's office dropping the charges against you, which is not going to happen, is the SJC decision your best hope?
If the SJC rules in our favor, that'd be a big win. But day to day, Ted, we don't plan on that. Hope for the best, expect the worst. One benefit to the SJC, to the appeal, to the affidavits submitted on behalf of the jurors that reached out to Alan and David, is it will hold a magnifying glass over the verdict, over the governing of the jurors, the logistics of it. So that's something we weren't expecting at the first trial. Things that were going on with the jury. We had issues with the verdict slip at the 11th hour. So this has helped us sort that out in advance of the second trial. So it has served a purpose, even if it's not the best outcome with the SJC.
So the jurors that came forward said that they found you not guilty on second-degree murder, but they were stuck on manslaughter. Why is that? Why do you think that there were people in that box that said, no, we believe Karen struck John?
Actually, I believe, and part of this is a little guesswork and filling in blanks, but the jurors that came forward indicated that they weren't actually even stuck on manslaughter. They were stuck on a subordinate charge beneath manslaughter, which means by definition, they were instructed you have to find not guilty on manslaughter to even go to a subordinate charge. So as it stands, as we sit here today, the information that we have is that she was acquitted on count 1, acquitted on count 3, acquitted on the upper charge of count 2, and they were stuck on something lesser like a DUI or DUI with injury or something like that.
But that would still mean that there were people in that box who thought Karen hit John.
I think that there are, I don't think so, Ted. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that there were people, I think that we dispatched that notion in trial to the nth degree. I don't believe that there were actually jurors in the box who believed that the Commonwealth had proved beyond any and all reasonable doubt that she struck John with her car. I think what they thought was there is a tragic situation, a tragic outcome. A man lost his life, and that is tragic. It's deeply tragic for John, his family. And that there was drinking going on, drinking by Brian Albert, drinking by Brian Higgins, drinking by Chris Albert, everybody, including Karen Reed. And she's the one on trial. Given the fact that there was drinking going on and someone lost their life, I think that there were certain people on the jury who just decided, I don't want to say not guilty across the board. Let's find something lesser to see if we can do something to close that loop for John O'Keefe.
That's exactly what Ronnie, the juror, said to Aidan Kearney in his interview that he gave Aidan Kearney on the air live on Saturday night. 2 people were there. 1 ended up dead. Therefore, she must have done it.
I don't think it had really intellectually anything to do with Karen Reed actually striking John O'Keefe.
Karen, would you like to see this case tried somewhere else? Moved out of Norfolk County, moved out of Massachusetts?
I'm not afraid of this case being tried in Norfolk County.
Wow.
I'm agnostic.
In terms of picking a jury for the next trial,
That's interesting.
It was a challenge the first time around. How the heck do you do it this time?
We're not looking for jurors that haven't heard about the case. That's going to be impossible. We're looking for jurors that haven't formed an opinion about the case, which is possible. And they may have, I know there are people in the jury pool that have maybe heard about the case tangentially or know my face or pass by it on the dial, but don't really know the evidence. I'm optimistic that those people exist and they'll hear the evidence and they'll see the truth. But I believe people in Norfolk County, I've seen it. And I'm not from Norfolk County. I didn't live there. I wasn't raised there. But they're smart and savvy and they're passionate. And when they do hear about the case, most of my supporters, I would guess, are from Norfolk County proportionately.
True.
And they're intelligent. They see this for what it is by following the evidence really closely. So I just need jurors that'll do that. I haven't done it yet, but will be willing to do that.
You've spoken at length about this case and the circumstances that have happened. Why not take the stand?
I am not saying that I'm not taking the stand. I felt confident in our case, in our defense, because a lot of our case was our cross-examination of these witnesses. And we made a game time decision, and I take the advice of my attorneys, but I'm not afraid of taking the stand. And I'm clearly not afraid of speaking, but I will not assign any genuine, truthful intentions to the prosecution. And I've already seen signs there, they're playing hardball. So we'll weigh the pros and cons, and we'll make another second game time decision.
Do you think
So
that this is
she's not ruling it out, but she'll testify she wants to, but she's not ruling it out. But it'll be a game time decision like it was last time.
personal for the DA's office, that they want a conviction more than probably any conviction they've ever gotten before?
Yes.
And there are certainly people, there are certainly people involved with the prosecution who want exactly that. I would venture to say there's not a single person in the Commonwealth at the prosecution level. I don't think there's a single person at the investigative level with law enforcement who actually believes in their heart that they can prove this case against Karen beyond any and all reasonable doubt. I don't think that there's a soul at the prosecution involved with the prosecution that believes that. Not a soul.
It's the hot potato. It's the hot potato case of Norfolk County.
I believe this is more a trial of a vendetta, of personal animus, of trying to save face. I don't think anybody there, honestly, put him down, strap him to a lie detector. Do you think you can prove this case beyond any reasonable doubt that Karen Reed did this? Nope, I don't think so.
Nope.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of personal interest and personal animus that has gotten in the way of the prosecution and the Commonwealth doing their duty, their sworn duty, not to prosecute someone unless they believe they can do so to a jury, an objective jury of her peers beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think any one of them think that.
Karen, is it your understanding that nobody in the Norfolk DA's office would try this case, and that's why they went to Hank Brennan?
We've heard rumors to that effect, and it was from some of the same people that told us Hank Brennan was being recruited within weeks of the mistrial. So I lend some credence to those rumors, but they're just rumors. And also, no one in the DA's office is trying this case for the retrial.
Right.
This case has become your
Right.
identity.
Seeing her facial expressions, they're a little bit hard to ignore, but she's very expressive. I am too. Thank you, Emma, for your super chat, and thank you, Kyle, also for your super chat. Oops.
Recruited within weeks of the mistrial. So I lend some credence to those rumors, but they're just rumors. And also, no one in the DA's office is trying this case for the retrial.
This case has become your identity. Is that for the rest of your life? Or will one day you just want to put it all behind you?
I don't think I can, even if I wanted to. And I'm okay with that. It's more important, this fight, than anything I've done by a wide margin. And it's made me realize that this happens all the time. And I'm just fortunate enough to be able to fight back. But what's happened to me has happened too easily, too swiftly, with seemingly no checks and balances other than the ones we can bring, that this can't be the first, it can't be the first time. And it's 2025 in Massachusetts, and it's happening right before everyone's eyes. It's hiding in plain sight. So this is a problem that I hope I'm here to address. And even if I'm not, it will be addressed. We're doing it right now.
Right.
Regardless of the outcome.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Thank you, Amara. I think she has a nice accent too.
Which will be an acquittal. Eyes have been opened. That's why Alan and I are sitting here, is there's interest, and people are evaluating their law enforcement and their elected officials and their district attorneys with a more critical eye than they were before. And that's a bigger impact and a purpose that I could have, even if it's been very, very difficult for me and the people that are closest to me.
Something that the prosecution has recently been focused on were calls you made to your mother overnight. What were those calls about?
Anyone who spent any time with me throughout my life knows I'm
Excellent. She gets to explain what those calls were about in the middle of the night. Listen up, folks. What were those calls about?
Something that the prosecution has recently been focused on were calls you made to your mother overnight. What were those calls about?
Anyone who spent any time with me throughout my life knows I'm incredibly close to my parents. And I was very troubled to put it on. You've heard the voicemails. It was a blizzard. There were young children unattended. And John, uncharacteristically, when I say uncharacteristically, I mean he's never done that before at that hour in those conditions. And I was panicked. I was torn between, did something go wrong, or is he purposely ignoring me and taking advantage of me to go home to the kids while he stay out drinking? And as I do, and do I wish I did it less? Yes, but now I need her more than ever. As I normally would do, I'd reach out to my mother for, what do you think's happening? And I, reach out to them every day now that night just, it's like I never woke up from it. So
I think the fact that the prosecution seems to be focusing on those calls and trying to wrap Karen's parents into this just shows a level of desperation that
Yep.
shows or suggests that the prosecution understands how thin, paper thin, chiffon thin their case is. They can't prove this case, and so they're just sort of desperately looking to scattershot other information to make innuendo about why would she call her mother. Like she calls her parents all the time. There's no there. Doesn't mean that the prosecution isn't going to look and make suggestions about it, but it's a desperate ploy, and there's nothing there.
What would surprise me or the people watching this about something that's transpired over the last 3 years?
I don't think so. I think one of the things that we've tried to do on the defense team from the beginning is pull that veil back, pull the curtain back, and show all the warts and blemishes of the Massachusetts State Police, the Canton Police Department, the investigative techniques that they used or didn't use, the Commonwealth's prosecution of a case like this. We wanted everybody to see everything. And we were pretty successful in that in terms of the presentation in front of the first jury. We intend to do it again in front of the second jury. So the thing that's most shocking is the full universe of information that now the community has in front of it. We have gotten call after call after call, email after email, text after text from community members who don't know us, certainly don't know me. I'm from California, saying this kind of thing happened to my family. This kind of thing happened to me. This kind of thing happened to my son. This kind of thing happened to my father, my mother. And nobody would ever look at it. Nobody would believe us. Nobody would listen. Thank God you folks have found the platform to show what actually is happening in our community. That's what has been most surprising. And it's there for everybody to see.
What is your relationship with Adam Lally and Hank Brennan? Is it cordial?
There's no relationship.
But you have to deal with them back and forth.
Not her.
Not me.
Okay. Your relationship with Hank Brennan?
Completely professional.
Okay.
Cordial, civil, professional. And that's all I expect. If he's going to prosecute this case, the only thing I expect from him is professionalism, which he has given me. It doesn't get, at least with me and with David and with Liza, it doesn't get personal. We deal with what we need to deal with in the courtroom.
Was that the same way with Adam Lally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, by and large. I disagree vehemently, vigorously with their prosecution of this case. They know that. I haven't made that, that is out there. But in terms of just day-to-day interaction, I expect the highest level of professionalism from them, and they get it from us.
It's business.
It's business.
State police have had people follow your drivers?
Yep.
We
Our
heard that.
drivers have been approached by the state police. They're no longer some are no longer my drivers because of that.
They've been targeted.
Very close friends had their cell phone records subpoenaed for an indictment that never happened. There's a lot of attempts to glean more about our team by the state police. There's probably, I wouldn't put it past them to some things going on as I'm sitting here.
Have you ever been followed?
I don't know. My eyes are akimbo all the time. I look at law enforcement differently, more warily. I don't know that I'm being followed. I've been tracked. I mean, I've been tracked on flights. I've been tracked when I've stayed in hotels. This is in.
How do you know you're being tracked?
I know from affidavit.
And we heard that in one of the snippets of interviews that was let out earlier.
It's from the state police at the Norfolk DA's office when they were investigating me last year. I was with my closest friend trying to get away from Massachusetts, and little did I know at the time, I learned about it afterwards, that they knew what flight I was on, they knew when I landed, they knew when I came back, and it's disturbing. It's invasive, and it's desperate.
Getting back to sort of just distilling, what is the one thing in this case that you believe proves your innocence?
John's body,
Yep, agreed.
no bruise, 6,000-pound full-size SUV.
Yep.
Not a bruise on his body, not a fracture below his head.
The medical examiner did not rule his death a homicide, correct?
Correct.
Was it undetermined?
Yes.
And that doesn't get
Undetermined.
revisited, correct?
Oh, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to revisit that. I don't think it'll be revisited by her. I mean, she came to the decision of.
Right.
So I don't think
When he
she's gonna-
says her, he's talking about the medical examiner who ruled the cause of death not a homicide but undetermined, even though Proctor is caught in text messages trying to get her to change that. And then DeChico says, rookie move. You should have had me and the other guy do it.
she's not going to, and if she does deviate from that decision, she's going to have to answer for that. And that will be an incredibly uncomfortable situation. I don't think that will happen. But it's very telling that their own best expert as it pertains to the physical evidence surrounding John and John's injuries did not rule this a homicide. And they have the burden of proof. That's one of the galling factors in this entire thing is the Commonwealth knows that their own expert or experts will not support their prosecution of Karen. Then dismiss the case. Do the right thing. Just do the right thing. And it's shocking that they won't.
John's niece and nephew, who he was taking care of, essentially testified against you in the trial. How hard was that?
I knew that was coming because I read.
Oh, I didn't hear this yet. This is Karen's, John's niece and nephew testifying against her.
I read what they testified to in the initial indictment almost 3 years ago. And they're part of a well that was poisoned almost as soon as he died. And they were 3 years younger then and impressionable and surrounded by adults that care for them and provide for them. And I was no longer one of those adults.
So sad.
And it's unfortunate. And I hope and wish for the best for them. But I've long come to terms with what's happened to the children.
Has Paul O'Keefe ever made any statements to you walking by or anything?
He sends me, he hasn't in a while, but he's attempted to send me Facebook messages. It's ironic because there's a stay away order. And yet I hear, they've attempted to send me messages. And as soon as I see the name comes up, I just delete it.
Because they're trying to get her to violate her stay away order. Wow, that's interesting.
I'm not interested in anything he has to say to me.
What do you think might be the tenor of those messages?
Negative, volatile. I mean, there was some volatility in court, and I think I'd attribute the same cause to Paul's emotions as I would to the children's.
Didn't he say something like, "We're not done with you yet. This isn't over yet"? As she was leaving court after the mistrial, right?
Bring it you.
I honestly don't even know he's there anymore. I mean, I'm aware that his immediate family's in the courtroom, but there's days that, we come home from hearings or we came home from court, and someone close to me will say, "Was that so and so on the O'Keefe side?" And I said, I honestly, I almost look through them at this point. I know they're there, and my family would be there. My family is there, but the O'Keefe's presence, Paul sitting there, doesn't impact me. It doesn't bother me. That's John's brother, but I couldn't tell you from one day to the next what color shirt he was wearing.
That reminds me of that Alanis Morissette song. We've talked about this several times. I see right through you. I walk right through you. The old Alanis Morissette, right through you.
Who's calling the shots? There's so many levels there, right? There's the troopers on the ground. There's the prosecutors. There's the DA.
That's the problem. And this is just us talking, but that's the problem with answering that question or trying to narrow that question. And she can answer it whichever way she wants to, but it can't be one. It's not one person. It's not. It's just not. There's not a singular tip of the spear.
Do you want to say? Do you want to? I mean, if that's the.
That is my opinion.
Yeah. I want to hear you. Obviously,
I just want to add to that. I already answered it very pointedly, but there's a garbage in, garbage out problem that forensic scientists or civilians or even local law enforcement that's assisting the investigators, their output and their determinations are only as good as what they're given, what they're testing, what they're measuring, what they're photographing. So I don't believe it's necessarily 40 different people, but I think it's garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
5-10 years from now, where is Karen Reed? What is she doing?
I don't know what I'll be doing, but I'll be busy, whatever I'm doing. And I care and I think more about whom will I be with. And God willing, it's my parents and the people who've seen me through this. And I hope to meet more of the people that are helping to pull our team through.
All the supporters.
Do you have the capacity to find someone new one day, or has that all just been destroyed by all of this?
Someone new, like a partner?
It's not destroyed. I didn't do anything wrong. And I cared for someone and he cared for me. And it ended tragically. And tragic things happen to relationships every day, to 67 relationships, or exponential this morning or last night. So I will not be permanently broken. I'm not broken temporarily. I've just been sidelined from what I thought I was doing on this planet. And it wasn't what I thought I was supposed to be doing. But there's been no irreparable damage to me or what I want out of life or what I want to make me happy.
Did you always know that you had the strength?
I could not have known that I could deal with what I'm dealing with, but I've never been deterred by anything in my life. And I have had challenges, not quite as big as this, but health challenges that severely incapacitated me and ruined my physical quality of life. This is more of a mental obstacle now, but I'm invigorated by challenges. It makes me feel stronger to overcome things. And I think part of the reason I can adapt to this new normal I'm in is because I've had to do it before. And I've been strengthened by the events of my life that brought me to 2022.
the hundreds of thousands of people who might be watching this, what would you like to say to them?
Thank you to the vast majority of them. And like I said earlier, only people very close to me knew the truth for a very long time, living day to day without a job, without anything to really focus on but this case, and know that even my neighbors who I could see out my window didn't really know the circumstances. And to have hundreds of thousands hear this and be enlightened is just a massive relief. And the support that people come up to me, to my family, Alan and I had a meal paid for in the North End, and it was, I don't know the last time I've done anything but tip a waiter. And that generosity, that's all helping fuel this. It helps me spiritually, and it helps me financially, and I want to thank the vast majority of those people.
She thanked everybody. Everybody's like, why didn't she thank everybody? She did. She just thanked everybody. I thought that interview was amazing. I have to go drive the mommy Uber. Let me just get through some of these things real fast. Please smash that like button on your way out, because this was a great interview, I thought, for Karen. Could the defense highlight in opening what evidence would be needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was hit by a car? Yes, yes, yes. The injuries will, the evidence will show. The evidence will show. Thank you, Jennifer, for your super chat. Can the defense be able to talk about the first trial? No. They can say that you've testified previously and use that testimony to impeach them, but they can't say this is a retrial. I really think they should have been told specifically there was no written report created by the CERT team versus you have all the evidence. That's judicial discretion. And so, yes, I think a lot of people felt that way. Thank you so much for your super chat, Padius. Carly, I listen to your coverage every day and have been following for a long time. My due date for my baby is right at the start of the Kearney trial. Congratulations. Congratulations. Nothing but the best. Thank you, Carly, for your super chat. Shari wants to know if I can go over the second charge. Nope, don't have time today. Ronnie's interview has caused me to have so many questions. Can't do that today. Maybe we can do that. Put it on the docket for another day. Tomorrow morning, there's a hearing at 11. I'm hoping to get the opposition papers that we couldn't get, that were not scanned into the docket, so we can go over them before the hearing at 11. So I'll probably set it for 10. Make sure you have all notifications set. Why haven't they addressed Fanning in court? You can bet fire on acid that will be part of the motion to dismiss, I imagine. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with me today. Please smash the like button on your way out. I have other things I need to do. Please comment respectfully. Let me know your thoughts about this interview in the comments. We have so many more things to talk about. I'll see you at least tomorrow, maybe even earlier than then, depending on what happens later tonight. So, as I always say, thank you to the moderators for keeping it classy, as always. Channel members, viewers, replay viewers, you're amazing. Do all the things YouTube likes. Hit the like button, comment respectfully, hit the subscribe button. It's free. Set all notifications to all. And stay cool, stay kind, stay classy. It is so not hard. It is so not hard. That interview was awesome. I think it was great for Karen, and I'm really happy about it. I hope you are too. I'll see you guys tomorrow at the latest. Bye. Peace.